12 o'clock. Welcome, audience. My name is Greg McDonough. I am the host of the Chief Endurance Officer podcast. You are tuning into our fourth YouTube live series. Today, we've got Hunter Allen. And if you don't know who he is, shame on you. He's the CEO and founder of Peaks Coaching Group. He has trained thousands and thousands of top athletes, world champions, Olympic medalists, author of several books. I started reading one of your books on power wattage, and I realized that talking to you is a lot more efficient than reading through the pages. So, Hunter, just to sort of welcome.
Yep. Hey, I'm glad to be here. This is super awesome, Greg, and thank you for inviting me. I mean, this is really cool. So great idea. I'm loving it.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and so just to sort of set the stage, right? Like, you know, I've been now doing sort of long distance triathlons for almost 10 years, and I've picked up a lot of bad habits, a lot of good habits. And there's always something that I wish I had known sort of going into race number one or even race number two. And I would love to chat with you about sort of the bike portion in particular. And like, let's just kick off with like
Sure.
some good ideas, some lessons learned that you sort of tricks
Yeah.
that you've got under your sleeve,
Right.
that you would tell a new athlete going
Yeah.
into their first, let's say, full distance Ironman race.
Perfect. Well, let's go with number one. The number one mistake that most triathletes do in a full, a half, even an Olympic distance race on the bike. We're talking about on the bike. It's low cadence, right? Everybody thinks for some reason, some myth happened out there in the world. There's some pro athlete or something that pedaled at 70 RPM and won Ironman or something. And then that's been propagated for years. That's the most economical cadence to be at. It is not. Okay. So we need to get our cadence up. We need to get that cadence into the 90 RPM range. It doesn't need to be 95 or 100, but 90 is really good. 85 to 95, is seen really as what's optimal. Why is that? All right. So number one, you have to remember you're running after the bike leg. Okay. So we need to preserve energy for the run. And so that's really critical. How do we preserve energy? Our main energy storage is muscle glycogen. Okay, so glycogen is stored glucose. When you eat carbohydrates, we turn those carbohydrates and we store that in our muscles, we store that in our liver. And so we need to save that. By pushing a big gear, by pedaling a slow cadence, you're using more strength than you're using of the muscles than you're using on your cardiovascular system. So cadence, we're always kind of balancing these two things: cardiovascular system, muscular strength. And so what we need to do is we need to shift that on the bike to the cardiovascular system. So that's a real key. This applies to bike racing too. It's not just triathlon, it applies to bike racing, right? If you're a bike racer, if you're doing a Grand Fondo, if you're doing whatever, it's like, man, don't ride around 70 RPM. You're using so much glycogen in those legs, and that you're not going to have the energy you need for the end of the event. And in this case, it's the run. So let's shift our cadence to 90, lower torque, right? So not pushing as hard as, on the pedals, right? A higher cadence so the cardiovascular system can take it. So that's number one.
It's super insightful. The question that came to mind, or what I like to discuss around that, is like, let's say you're in a hilly terrain, you've got a ton of elevation gain across your course, across your ride. How should you mentally be thinking about cadence while climbing?
Yeah, so that's a great question. That's a really good question. That's kind of the next thing to think about is like, well, how do I do that on a climb where it's steep? Like, gosh, if you're doing Ironman Lake Placid, you have a long climb, a couple of long climbs you're dealing with. Ironman Canada, I mean, you're doing Ironman Wisconsin, it's nothing but hills. So there are a bunch of these events. Same thing on the bicycle. Like, gosh, there's tons of Grand Fondos and there's tons of other events that are similar where there you got big climbs. So how do we do that? And how do we, balance it? Because it's really hard to pedal 90 RPM up a hill. All right. And that at that point is probably the opposite side. Like you're pedaling too quickly on the hill for how, now you've shifted too much to the cardiovascular system and not enough to the strength system. So, okay, on a hill, let's say, I don't want you at 50 RPM. I don't want you at 60 RPM. Let's get to 70 RPM on a hill. Okay, so 70 RPM is a good place. 70 to 80 is a great place. So now it's something that at least, we're using some muscular strength. All right, so we're going to use some glycogen there, but hopefully you've trained and so you've got good stores, right? But then we're also having a good shift or a good balance to the cardiovascular system. Um, and at a certain point, when you're on a hill, it's, get out of the saddle, stretch the back, use different muscle groups, shift your weight forward so that your body is upright. Too many people I see riding like this, they get out of the saddle and they just sit up like this. And so their butt is here and their head is here, right? And so they're pedaling like this up and down, whereas you need to go like this, right? Because that way, then gravity, you're letting the body weight fall down on your pedals. So that's a great thing, right? You can totally do those things to kind of shift some of that, but hopefully that helps with cadence.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I just want to ask you one more question on that. And it's slipping me now. Anyway, it'll come back to me. Sorry.
So yeah.
No, that's what it was. So, you and I are working together. It's
Mhm.
been a handful of months. The results are amazing, and we'll really find out this weekend when I race. Um, but as I'm thinking about training and as we're doing rides outdoors and focusing on cadence and power and the things, like how do we add sort of the cadence training into our sequential training? Like week one, am I struggling to get 80 RPMs across my ride, but like week 10, I'm at 90, 95. Is that something that we should be actively measuring and growing as we do the wattage and as we do the distance and as we do elevation? Is that sort of, do you build on cadence?
Great. Yeah. Awesome question. Absolutely. You can train it, right? So it absolutely is trainable. Training a higher cadence is certainly something that you should focus on. The easiest way to do it is just do what I call fast pedaling drills. So in your warm up, the first hour of your ride or even the first 30 minutes of your ride, include 5 or 10 times 1 minute fast pedaling drills. It's
Mhm.
low wattage, right? So your watts may be, let's say for example, if your FTP is, 200 watts, maybe you're only going to do 120 or 130 or 140 watts. So you're not pedaling hard, but you're pedaling fast. And you pedal fast and you pedal faster than normal. Okay. So if your norm is 80, well, let's go to 100. Let's go to 105. You might be bouncing in the saddle. That's totally fine. I'll start to smooth that out, but pedal fast for a minute and then rest for a minute. Rest back at your normal cadence, right? We call it self-selected cadence. Rest back at that, whatever that is, 90, 80, whatever. Then, okay, let's do another minute. If you do 10 of those in a row, then, and you can do that at the beginning of your ride, you can do that at the end of your ride, you can do that in the center of your ride, wherever. If you start working on those things just like that, like I'm going to do this every ride, I'm going to do 5 fast pedaling drills, or I'm going to do 10 fast pedaling drills. All of a sudden, you realize, and then during the ride too, you're conscious of it, right? You're using your intention. You're looking at your bike computer and you're looking at cadence and you're like, okay, I'm going to pedal over 85 RPM the whole time. Every time I see 85 or lower, I'm going to pick it up. I just had my cycling camp, my road cycling camp here in Virginia, where our headquarters is in the Blue Ridge Mountains. And we had a triathlete come. We always have triathletes and road people come. We had a triathlete come and he struggled with his cadence. He was making the same mistake. He's a really new triathlete, good athlete, but just was really new. And so I made a screen on his Garmin that just had cadence and power. And I said, this is all you're looking at. I want that cadence that was the biggest number. I want that thing to be over 85 at all times. And then I made an alert on his Garmin that every time it went below 80, it sent a little message, raise your cadence.
That's awesome, Hunter. I did when I did Copenhagen last year, I set alerts on my Garmin for different heart rate zones.
Hmm?
And I also set alerts for to feed and to hydrate. And I got it's like every 7 minutes, it was like, and it was just driving me crazy. Like, what am I supposed to do now? But yeah, some great insights there. It's funny. Like again, I said I've been doing this now for almost a decade, and I only just recently got into focusing on wattage and
Mhm.
the benefits of that on my cycling. If you and I connected 10 years ago and I was training for my first Ironman at Lake Placid, like what would our conversation be around related to wattage?
Right. Yeah. I mean, so 10 years ago, gosh, I mean, it wouldn't be all that different, Greg, to be honest, because, I mean, we started this journey back in 2000. So 25 years ago, I got a power meter in 1999. My buddy Kevin Williams, he and I built Cycling Peaks software, which became Training Peaks software, in 2000, from 2000 to 2003, and launched that in 2003. So we've learned a lot in those first 10 years, and especially around triathlon, because I'm a road cyclist, and so we were learning a tremendous amount about road. We had some things that we knew, but then I started really working with a ton of triathletes using power meters. What is the demands of the sport, right? We always have to find out the demands of the sport first, right? We have a general demand. Okay, if you're doing a half Ironman, we know how far you're going to ride. We know how many feet of elevation that's going to climb. But then we have to have specific demands. Oh, there's a 10-minute climb, or hey, there's 15 little hills. Each of them are a minute long, or this is dead flat race, but it's going to have wind. So we have to understand the demands of the event itself, and then we have to figure out what your strengths and limiters are. And so I think that's where we say, okay, gosh, like with you, we've done some testing, right? We've had to do some testing. We've had to figure out, okay, what's your FTP? What's your 1 minute power, your 5 minute power? I want to know all that stuff, even though you're not going to do a 1 minute effort, hopefully all out in a triathlon. You better not. um, we still need to know it. And so then that way we can target and start to figure out, okay, all right, where do we need to train? What areas do we need to move? And then once we've got that dialed in, then we can say, okay, let's just lift what really is important for your event. And in
Mm.
triathlon, and really, Greg, in all cycling, it's FTP, right? Because if your FTP is 150 watts and you start out cycling, and let's say that equates to an average speed of 15 miles an hour, and we raise your FTP to 200 watts, that equates to an average speed of 20 miles an hour. And it's like, you're just faster, right? So a quick anecdote, and I coached an athlete she won the Race Across America, RAM. 11 days, all the way across the United States, no sleep, all that crazy stuff, right? And she did all kinds of intervals. I had her doing FTP intervals, VO2 max intervals, anaerobic capacity intervals. And we moved her FTP from 170 watts to 240 watts.
Wow.
And it was like she just rode faster. She won RAM because she rode faster. She was fitter.
Wow. That's exciting. We have an audience member who asked us a question, and she's asking about your first pair of cleats and staying balanced and building confidence, gaining confidence on the bike while you have a disability. So can you talk about sort of new cleats, building confidence on the bike, and thinking about if you have got a disability, or to your point, figuring out exactly where our strengths and weaknesses are?
Absolutely. So cleats are always kind of an issue because one, it's you're trying to find the cleat to get into the cleat, especially ones that are just one-sided. So like the Shimano pedals or the Look compatible pedals or something. If you have Speedplay pedals, it doesn't matter so much, or even SPDs like the mountain bike ones, you just plop your foot in on either side and you can just go. But at the same time, there's still always a little bit of anxiety around, okay, am I going to fall over in the intersection? And just let you know, everybody does it. I've done it. Everybody
I've
does
done
it.
it.
We've all fallen over in the intersection. It's embarrassing. You're gonna do it. It's okay. Um, but here's the trick. So don't worry about getting in your cleats at an intersection right away. Just put your foot on the pedal and just pedal and get through the intersection, get yourself up to speed so that you don't have to worry about balance, and then put your foot in the pedal. Now I'm going 15 miles an hour. Oh, I'm 200 yards down the road. I put my foot in the pedal. Where do you practice? Practice in the grass. Go find a level field, your front yard, wherever, where it's grassy, and but not like, oh wow, it's so deep that it had to struggle to pedal and get going, but and get up to speed. So you need to kind of have some room, get up to speed, and then clip in and practice clipping in, practice finding where that is and clipping in. So that's good. So think about those things from a disability standpoint. This is certainly a big question, and I don't know the disability, so it's one of those things where you have to understand kind of what that is first. And I think that that's a key part. I mean, if it's we even have a coach who works with amputees. He's an amputee himself, so he works with amputees and has a really in-depth knowledge here at Peaks Coaching Group on how to work with amputees. All those kind of things I think are key. So I'd have to know more about the disability to understand kind of how to answer that question.
Super helpful. So you talked about the question that came to mind. I'd love to chat with you about with respect to cleats and mounting and getting on the bike is at transition one or coming out of T1. There are those in the camp that like to do that flying mount with the the shoes rubber banded to the back of the bike, and I've never tried it and probably never will. Maybe I will now on grass just to see
Right.
what happens. Do you have any sort of tips or tricks? Or I guess at my level, I'm not really saving that much time. Like a few seconds doesn't really matter to my race day, so that's probably why I don't get into it. But
Right.
what do you see sort of across the board?
Yeah. So I think that's the part of the answer there is where are you in the ability, right? So if you're really like, man, I am on it and I'm going to win this thing and I'm competitive, then I think it makes really good sense to have the shoes. One, have shoes that you can slip into and have one Velcro strap or whatever, and then you have them already clipped in. And so that makes a lot of sense from that perspective because the seconds do count, especially in a sprint race. But otherwise, like having good triathlon shoes that are also really easy to get into are perfectly fine. And I think that to me, practicing your transition, practicing, set out all your stuff, right? Get it all there on the mat, do all the things, right? You got to practice that. Because, if you don't practice it and you go to your race, it's like, oh, where's this? Where's that? You're fumbling around. You're trying to figure out your system, and it's all about that system in your transition. Like, oh, there's my shoes. There's my glasses. There's my water bottle. There's whatever. You got all your stuff there, and so practice it, and then go and get on that bike and take off. So obviously,
Yeah, for me, um, talking about transition setup, like when I pack, I actually lay out my transition area at home and sort of double check my checklist. Right? I've got the checklist for the checklist. And then I take the items from the transition area and put them into my transition bag so that I know, like, from one to one, it's all there. It's funny, you bring up a memory. I was at, I think, Eagle Man here in Maryland. It's a half, middle of summer, and it's just boiling hot, and I'm standing in the transition area, about to go to the swim start in my wetsuit, national anthem playing, and I look down and my bike shoes aren't there.
oh,
And I'm like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? And I've got speed plays, right? So it's not really easy to do on sneakers. Luckily, I found my wife who was there supporting me, and I was like, can you go back to the hotel and just make this happen? And when I came out of the water and I get to my transition, like these magical shoes were there.
Those are like what the nightmares that I have, right? I mean, it's like, I have these recurring nightmares that are just like I'm trying to get to the race and the car's broken down, and then and then I'm hitching a ride on a farmer's like, tractor, and then I get to the race and I forget my shoes and I got to go back, and then I get back and I don't have my racing license. Oh, it sounds terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. So Hunter, we got a follow-up on the cleat conversation. And this is a great question. Like, why are cleats better than tennis shoes? Right? If you are just coming in and out of transition, why are cleats better than tennis shoes?
Right. Right. First off, number one, we've got to they have a very stiff sole. All right. So you want to, when you have a tennis shoe on a pedal, you're basically losing energy because of the flex of the shoe. So all of that power is coming from your hips down through the quadricep, glutes, in through the knee, into the ankle, right down into the center of the foot. And you want that power to go straight into the pedals. And so a stiff soled shoe allows all that power to go directly in the pedals. Where if you have just a running shoe, it's flying out everywhere. It's just not getting in there very well.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, keep the questions coming, audience members. Also, if you screenshot that you're watching this and tag me on Instagram at Chief Endurance Officer Podcast, I'll send you one of these hats. I'll DM you back and I'll send you one of my running hats. Hunter, you mentioned earlier at the beginning, you talked about the number one mistake, which is low cadence. Do you have a number two?
Yeah, so from a triathlon perspective, the number two one then is you need a pacing plan. Okay, so we need to understand what power from your power meter are you going to hold, and so there's a percentage of your threshold power, and that's based on the length of the triathlon. So a sprint is different than an Olympic. This is different than our half versus a full. So, and I've got a chart in my book, Training and Racing with a Power Meter, that talks about this. There's a whole, almost a full chapter on triathlon in there. And so that's really important. But when you know that, right, let's say it's 68% of your FTP, right? So that's probably a good place for most people to be when they do an Ironman, a full Ironman. It could even be lower. It could be 60% of their FTP, depending on, how strong of a runner you are and then how well trained you are. So having a pacing schedule, understanding that, okay, I need to hold this many watts and I need to make sure I don't go over this for my half Olympic, whatever. That's a critical piece because you need to run. You want to run in the run. You don't want to walk the run. And that is the biggest second mistake is like, okay, wow, just people start too hard, right?
Mm.
They just take off. They're excited. You get out of the swim. You go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. I'm gonna push it. And the first hour, they're, oh well, my 68% number is 200 watts, and they're holding 250 in the first hour. It's like, dude, you're gonna blow, and you're gonna be walking the run at the end. It's too hard.
There's been so many times. It is so exciting, right? Especially um, for me, like I'm a pretty good swimmer, and so I come out near the top 10% of my age group, and then I'm just getting hammered on the bike, and it's like, zip tires and this, and like on your left, on your left, on your left, and it's like really damages your ego eventually, and then you start pushing too hard, and then to your point, I'm wondering why I walked 80% of the run when it comes to an Ironman race, and which is one of the reasons we're working so well together. Uh, Hunter, for those in the audience who aren't fully averse on FTP, can you kind of give us a high level of what that is if you're
Sure.
sort of a newer athlete coming into this?
Absolutely. So the definition is FTP, functional threshold power. It's the highest power you can maintain in a quasi-steady state without fatiguing. So, and that's about an hour. And so it could be 47 minutes, it could be 53 minutes, it could be exactly an hour. And so basically, it's the highest power you can average in a 1 hour test. You're going to go out and do your very best for an hour. That's the definition of FTP. Now, Not everybody can do that, right? Not everybody has a place to ride for 60 minutes as hard as they can. We've got stoplights, we've got all these things we're dealing with, nor do they have the good course, right? So you can't do it on a rolling road because you're going way above your FTP on the uphills and then you're not pedaling on the downhills. That doesn't really tell us a lot. So you need to have either a steady climb or a flat road. Um, so I came up with a shortcut, and the shortcut is basically you can do a 5 minute test as hard as you can. 5 minutes called the 5 minute blowout. You go as hard as you can for 5 minutes, then you rest for 5 minutes, and then you do 20 minutes. And so you do a 20-minute test, and you take 95% of that 20-minute test, and that should be pretty close to what you'll hold for an hour. Okay, it's still an approximation. It's still a shortcut. It's not the truth. You want to do it. You want to know it. You got to go hard for an hour, but it's close. And the critical thing, Greg, is you've got to do the 5 minute blowout first. Most people don't do that, and so then their 20-minute numbers inflated,
Mm.
and so then when you take 5% off, it's not enough, right? And they can't maintain it for 60 minutes. So really critical. I want everybody to know, like, got to do the 5 minute blowout, crush it. You blow at the end of that 5 minutes, rest for 5 minutes, and the purpose is again to kind of pre-fatigue the muscles and to get rid of what we call the anaerobic work capacity. So we just get rid of that. It's out of the system. So when you start the 20-minute, now you're aerobic. I'm producing energy aerobically.
Super helpful. So my promise to the audience is not to overwhelm you with data, especially if you're a newer athlete. I know about 30 minutes is sort of the sweet spot of these conversations. We talked on cadence, we talked on race plan, we talked on cleats and this FTP estimate. So I think we've given our audience a pretty good sampling of hopefully improve somebody's day when it comes to race day. So Hunter, I just wanted to say, one, thank you for those who are watching. We're doing this again next week with Rebekah Keat, talk about some running. So keep an eye out for that announcement. This is super insightful, Hunter, and I kind of wish I had this conversation 10 years ago, but that's all right. The next 10 years are going to be just as good.
Absolutely. Great. Thanks again, Greg, for having me on. It's super fun. I hope this has helped everybody. And check me out if you do. Peakscoachinggroup.com is the best place to find me. And if you're thinking about triathlon and how to best pace yourself, my book with Dr. Coggin is Training and Racing with a Power Meter, and it's got a whole section on there on triathlon and all of the different things for everybody in cycling.
And I can speak from experience that it will change your life.
Nice.
Absolutely.
Nice. Awesome. Awesome. Great. Thanks, Greg.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah, that